Uh, Welcome to EnneaQuest with me, Michelle Cheen, and Saffron Baggallay. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm not sure if people can see you. I'm live. I'm going to move you into the scene, yeah, I hope. Let's see if we can. There we go. I think we're both there now. Welcome, and thank you for joining me from an African storm, it seems, on your side.
Yes, an African storm with my green screen. I hope you like
it. It's very earthy. I like it. It's
And we have no electricity.
and listen to that.
Yeah, I'm sure you're feeling very homesick right now.
I am. We have snow, lots of snow outside. So it's kind of, ooh, and hello, we have a special guest.
I'm sorry, my little six
No.
has to be with me. He cannot cope with this kind of weather. I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. We love that. She
My
looks. What's her name? His name?
It's Alex. He's a little boy. He's Alex, my little Alex man. He's my little six.
It's very scary, those noises. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So we today are on our last episode of 9, and it's a bit sad. I love chatting to you, so hopefully we can do something in the future again around the Enneagram.
Definitely, Michelle. Yeah.
That would be very cool. So, but our theme today is kind of the final, Unbound, freedom. My theme in the Wisdom Seekers this month is freedom, and we're looking at how does the Enneagram guide us in understanding this. But something interesting that's kind of, I'm trying to find the right words for it. My question that I'd love to start with is kind of, do we limit our freedom through these models, by looking at ourselves as types or, codes and things like that?
Yes.
Do you think we limit ourselves through that?
Yes, I do. And I think that is why people are resistant to typologies. So I can appreciate when people are resistant to typologies. I was, in fact, resistant when I first learned, for example, DISC. I really didn't like Myers-Briggs. I really found even insights like very simplistic and kind of boxy. And I remember when I got my Myers-Briggs, I was really like, but this is not all I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then even the Enneagram, yeah. Yes, but it's completely different. And that's why, after having gone into all of them, I'm a 7, I'm a glutton. If I am interested to know something, I will literally research. And the 5 in me is like, I have to get this completely understood before I will buy in or not.
Yeah.
And the thing that's different about the Enneagram from the other typologies, which is actually why I started using the word code and not type, because I think the word type is misleading. And that's why we're always careful to say, which type do you lead from? Because that's the one that we're kind of most addicted to, but we're really addicted to all of them, and we've got all of them in us.
Yeah.
And when you get into higher grade Enneagram, you start with your lead type, you realize that the stress point is significant for unleashing, you move towards the security point, although it's not that's good and that's bad, as we've discussed. There's that, then there's the wings, and then actually when you really start getting into it, you begin at 9 and you go to 6 and 3 and 1 and 4 and 2 and 8 and 5 and 7 and back to 1. And how do I know that? Because that's the integration pattern. So that's called the process Enneagram. And it can be used to unpack processes and have what I would consider to be much more valuable conversations. But it can be used on yourself.
Yeah.
What's my current reality? So I think that whilst, yes, the freedom can be limited, again, it's a user error, though.
Yeah.
Because it's the person who's going to limit themselves.
And I feel like that's our default mode in general, because we simplify to understand, and by that simplification we use judgment. So you go, oh, you're an 8 or you're a 7, a fairy, as I know you got it, which triggers all these emotions, and it kind of creates a stress point, in essence, for that person, and therefore, okay, I withdraw. But there's no freedom in that. There's no who am I. Yeah.
Michelle, thank you for saying this, because the thing that probably the only thing that would stop me from teaching the Enneagram is the concern that people that I teach would then box and label and weaponize.
Yeah.
People can oh, you're such an 8. Oh, you're such a 4. Such a 4. Oh, look at you, you're a 7. And I'm like, no, every single one of us is a unique version of our type. Never, ever lose sight of that. We've all got our own story. We've all got a different demographic profile. We've got different levels of health. We can show up in all kinds of things. There's different interjections, it depends on the culture, the religion, the family influence. There's so many factors, rural, education, blah, just so many ways to slice and dice the human being.
And as you said last time, the type is the mask. So to then attribute the person to the mask is kind of futile.
Yeah. So I think this is a very, very important point you bring up.
And I think that is, I see it in general in the world. We want to simplify and therefore lose the human centricity in connection. Which is a sad thing, isn't it?
Well, that's your 4 gift, paying attention to the connections, because as we know, 4s, But, that's why also in the narrative, we call the Enneagram a map. A map that we consciously hold lightly.
Yeah.
And also, like, when you see your ego structure, your pattern, put it next to you. And have a little lach. I always imagine that I'm driving a car and my 7 is next to me.
Yeah.
and my 6, or my, Ethel is my 1, Pamela is my 6, Bridget is my 7, whatever. So I'm like, sometimes I'm like, you know what? Shut up.
I like that. It's very cool. It's kind of the ultimate observer and kind of interplaying with these aspects of ourselves, because we can take life way too seriously, I reckon.
Definitely. Once I was having such an animated conversation with my alter ego that a friend of mine was waving at me and I didn't even notice her. It's so funny. She was like in the next car. So funny.
Oh, that's brilliant.
But I think also, it's true what you say. Comedy is the bedfellow of tragedy. And I think if we are looking always at that, at the heaviness of the work being the personal mastery work, then why would we continue to do it indefinitely? There must be that. And also maybe it's the 7 in me, and I've dialed it back over the years, because I think I used to bring too much fun and lightness into the sessions and my teaching. But also to be able to have a little laugh at yourself.
Yes, and to experience this humanness, the physical experience of life is quite interesting, especially in contexts these days, because there's quite a lot going on the outside to have these inner conversations, and to bring it back to freedom. How do we experience freedom, or what does the Enneagram teach us about this experience we have with the concept of freedom, which I'm not so sure I can define yet completely.
So the concept of freedom in the Enneagram, and this is actually the purpose of the Enneagram, which is why I get so freaked out when I hear that somebody's done 1 3-month course in the Enneagram and now suddenly they're a qualified coach. Flip that, it freaks me out, because it's very much about doing deep inner work. And the freedom from George Gurdjieff, he was the one who really sort of pioneered this, was all around the freedom of letting go of your ego and finding your essence. And so the whole purpose of the Enneagram in its essence is to hold the map And sometimes even go, like, I am a 4, but actually I'm feeling a little 7 today. So let me explore that 7 in me, because it is there. It's just that we've completely lost sight of it, or it's no longer a trigger because we've healed it. I do believe in the lineage karmic aspect of our Ennea type. But anyway, the George Gurdjieffian theory was all around being able to see it. And then because I can see it, let it go. And so, as I say to people when I begin my programs, it's not about boxing you. It's about showing you that you do have a lens that you're addicted to, just like you might be a little addicted to chocolate or beer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and it can be quite freeing to realize that you're not that strange, you
But
know.
that's another thing I wanted to say. The
Yeah,
most freeing thing for me about learning the Enneagram was knowing that I'm not alone.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not some freak who like has whatever. I actually there's millions of other 7s who really do feel and experience and sense and whatever the
Mm.
same way.
Yeah, yeah, which is freeing in itself because it kind of gives you the ability to really tap into, okay, wow, why am I seeing it this way? You know, there was something very interesting that you said, in I think it was the Lead Hership program. You said something around how the 4 sees the world. Even if they're really struggling, they will see the beauty in the, you know, it's that element of, I I can't really, you know, because there's a lot of darkness often that I think the 4 deals with. But even in that darkness, that beauty is so
Mm.
prevalent. You know, it stands out, and it was always this weird paradox that I experienced. I was like, oh, okay, this is actually a thing. This isn't just
Yeah.
through my eyes. Yeah.
That's actually why I became a sociologist.
Mm,
When I was about 17, I read something that changed my life. It said, whatever you are going through right now,
mm,
millions and millions of other people around the world are going through the same thing.
mm, yeah.
And I wanted to understand that better.
Yeah.
And that's why I started studying humans.
Yeah. Isn't
Mm.
it? It's such a powerful thing, to know that, not that we're not alone, but that we have this invisible connection in experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's such a beautiful way of saying it. Gosh. And of course, a 4 would say that because you innately understand
Mm.
connections. This
Mm.
is the gift of the 4.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you are so good at maintaining connections. Oh, that's why I wish I was a 4. I'm so good at it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. It's an interesting concept because it's not a thing that you think of. It's just, as a 4, it's just how life is. There is just these connections, and to really make them, small talk doesn't really work. Like, the superficial things don't really work because it's like, oh, but who are you? Like,
Another thing I love about 4s, that they don't do small talk. They love going, meow. I love it.
yeah.
Most 7s, though, I'm the anomaly, though. Most 7s would be like, meow. So as much as you want to connect, the 7's like, oh, no, not too much.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's what makes it. I suppose that's the element of freedom. If we can see, okay, well, that I'm a bit much now. This is a different person. So how do we connect again without overwhelm? Which is another aspect, I suppose, that the Enneagram brings us.
The bottom
Seeing
line
people.
is there's a freedom in being able to not take things personally because we don't have to when we have the knowledge and the understanding that it isn't personal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's the greatest freedom of all.
yeah, yeah. That's very true because it's not. It's the mask aspect again. It's the pattern. It's the, how do I usually deal with this wounded, um,
Mm.
or the wound? How do I,
Yeah.
yeah, protect myself?
Your Enneagram type, for those of your listeners, the Enneagram type is not who you are.
Mm,
You are a magnificent being full of potential. The Enneagram is a coping strategy. And all this is providing us with a map on how to cope in a more healed way, where we're not then harming ourselves more unwittingly. That's it.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? We do that by seeing it and acknowledging it, and then taking action around things that hurt us, I suppose, or limit us or harm us.
Yeah.
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 And that for me is the beautiful thing about the Enneagram.
Yeah. And that gives us the freedom to connect, to be that essence, that inside part, and let the rest kind of run its course in a way,
Yeah.
without too much investment.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting, like that word investment. Like, we have to invest, and yet when we over invest in negativity or positivity,
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you're a 4 and I'm a 7. 7s over invest in positivity
Yeah.
and reframe and get ourselves into hot water that way. So again, positivity can be toxic and
Very.
negativity can be enriching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the balance, isn't it? It's finding that balance, which is you in the middle. I think. I hope.
And that
Yeah.
is our freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that? Well, obviously, different enneagrams experience or understand freedom differently. For example, the difference, say, between a 1 and a 4 Lee type would see freedom very differently.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah. And freedom comes through the security point.
Ah.
So you are freer from the struggle when you're in your 1, because you are pragmatic and focused and very ethical, very moral. That's why I always say 4s are such ethical, moral people. You have such innate compasses. Because actually, the real you is more like the 1.
Yeah.
Very practical human.
Mm.
So for me, it would be, as a 7, it would be my 5. And it's true. My happy place is when I'm sort of with select people that I really, really value and have deep conversations. I know that I connect with people intellectually. It's how I connect. Whereas for you, I would imagine it's more the sort of essence and the qualities of that person. And there's something, I always think of 4s connections with people like glitter. There's this kind of
Yeah.
energy all the time. Whereas for me, if I don't find somebody mentally stimulating, I definitely don't want to hang out with them. And I have no problem sort of cutting people off. Head
Yeah.
types really don't. Whereas I think for you, it's more long lasting, those connections.
Yeah. And yet there's that. I mean, I lean quite into my 5 wing as well. So often I,
That's
you
true.
know, but it's interesting because all connections have stimulation for me, because it's understanding, how do you see it, why do you see it that way. To get that understanding is that curiosity, that kind of, oh, I want to know more because I don't see it that way, and that's what makes it more interesting. um
Right.
and not the I'm right and you wrong, or this is how you should do it, or any of that really, but
Yeah,
more kind of leaning into the curiosity, I suppose. Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Curiosity is a very powerful leadership quality to
Mm.
have. In fact, I think it's one of the critical leadership qualities to develop.
Yeah.
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 Keeps us out of bias.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's well, I can't imagine without it. So it's difficult to say, how you wouldn't want to know more. And I suppose that's also that 5 element of, there's something interesting, and 3 days later I come out of the rabbit hole and have gone off through all the different kind of possibilities as to what it could be about? Or, what are the facts? What's the etymology of the word? And why are we using it like this now? And what does it mean? And all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody listening, if you want to know anything about the 4, they're very deep. And like the 5 and the 8, they don't do anything by half measures.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I suppose in that, this is the paradox that I think we have with freedom, is there is a level of constraint to all of our freedoms.
Yeah.
And for those types especially, it is that can't let it go until I've done it proper, like until I've really gone into it and feel like this is my thing now. And then I can move on and let it go.
Yeah, I mean, look, the cynic in me goes, freedom is a complete illusion.
Yeah.
And the sociologist in me goes, yeah, if you think you're free, then sorry for you. Because, there's like a gazillion cameras on every single street corner in every city of the world,
Yeah.
So if we're looking at it from that point of view. But to quote one of my favorite playwrights, probably my favorite playwright, who is a 4, Tennessee Williams, freedom really only comes when we're 9 feet under in a box. But but a more sort of conscious freedom, if we are working with freedom from a spiritual or relationship aspect, even, I think that real freedom is actually only being able to live in the present. And I don't know that that's got anything to do with your type. Again, one must remember that the type is a coping strategy only. So if I'm in the present, I'm just in the present. But I'm like, oh my gosh, that's hard.
Yeah, because we are so conditioned to either learn from the past or plan for the future. There's no conditioning to be in the present. I think as a collective, we've only really become aware of it as a practice in the Western world over the last 10 to 20 years, really.
Yes, I agree with you totally. And, if we even look at the school system, for example, the school system has conditioned all of us really only to predict and control, predict, measure, and control, predict, measure, and control. And it's such an irony. Anyway, we could talk a lot about that too, because it's a manufacturing system as opposed to what we need today, which is a lot more creative thinking and convergent thinking and all of that. But I always feel so sorry for people when their company's values, one of them is innovation. I'm like, shame. You spent 12 years at school and then 4 years at university being conditioned into not being innovative at all. And now you expect to be at your place of work. Oh, well. Yeah. And innovation requires confidence and a belief in your intuition and all the things that most people are totally disassociated from.
And breaking the rules and thinking outside the box and being different and all these things which you're not supposed to do when you're at school because, you talk too much, all these things.
I always have such a little giggle to myself when I see that their value is innovation. I'm like, shame, that's going to go down like a red balloon.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I saw a reel this morning and the guy was saying the one of the main attributes, I can't remember his words, but the entrepreneurs, the guys that do big things, are usually those C students that are dreaming and looking out the window and just doing enough to get by, so that there's room for dreams, and I suppose that's where the freedom lies. It's where I take the control as to how much I'm going to invest into your system. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And also, you've just sparked another thought. Thank you. Is freedom is also having the confidence to say, I don't agree with that rule, or that doesn't work for flip. Okay, Michelle, now you're definitely getting into territory that I feel passionately about, because otherwise we can all be coerced into policies and rules and behaviors that are totally not conducive to mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. Or to our growth. we've been having these conversations around disruption and the importance of disruption for change and growth and all of those things. But the disruptors have always been pushed down, and I think the 4 is coming out again. But Pluto did move into Aquarius yesterday, and we
Yes.
are going into a different era
Yes.
where the people are hopefully owning their power and their voice and their freedom in it.
Oh, from your lips to whoever's ears. You know, when I was a high school teacher, I always used to say to the rebels, the misfits, the kids, I used to say to them, come hang out with me.
Yeah.
I will prove to you that you are the important people in the world. Because
Yeah.
that was me at school. I was always getting detention. And I mean, I even got, what's it, not expelled? When you're not allowed to, what?
Suspended.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what. Yeah, I was delighted. I was like, "Yay, that's so cool!" But not just because I could watch movies at home, but I was like, I'm really taking a stand against apartheid, and I was so delighted with myself, But the point is that it is the rebels, and I always, I used to sit at the matric valediction, the graduation valediction ceremonies, and I used to think to myself, yeah, it's those little reprobates from my class that didn't even have their ties on properly and had blue hair and like no shoes on, and these are the kids I used to sit there and think to myself, yeah, you are either going to be in millionaires or in prison by the time you're done, by the time you're 30. And all the ones going up there collecting trophy after trophy, I think to myself, yeah, you're going to be pushing papers on the 9th floor of a building one day. And true's nuts, one of my matric boys, I told him this. I said, yeah, no, you are either going to be in prison or a millionaire by the time you're 30. And he phoned me on his 30th birthday and he said, guess what? I said, you're a millionaire. He said, you're right. I'm a millionaire. And he started his own like art business. I don't know. I can't remember. It was something to do with art.
Yeah.
But you are correct. It is the truth, because.
Yeah.
But you are right also in that the rebels are the ones that are muted. But like, let's be honest. Why are they muted? Because they are the problem children, like
Yeah.
Jane Paul,
Yeah.
who by the way is a fool. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because they also create disruption, isn't it? It breaks the.
I mean, imagine we didn't have disruptors.
No.
Where would we be?
No.
But you've got to be confident to be a disruptor. You can't be a disruptor without some sort of sense of self.
And the willingness to fail. The not the willingness to fail. I don't know what the right word is. Kind of
Willingness to be not liked.
yes.
The willingness to be outcast.
Yeah.
The willingness to be shamed. The willingness to be, yeah. I mean, look at the division. My goodness, there's so much division in the world.
Yeah, and it's all built on I, us, and them. If in any way, whether it is based in race or color or I don't know, political party or all the kind of things that you can think of, there will always be division created through that.
You know why? Because othering keeps communities weak. It keeps people weak. Yeah. And I mean, anyway, I could talk about that a lot too.
Yeah. And that is also a level of losing our freedom when we are being influenced by these narratives. It's like an immediate red flag for me. It's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Yeah.
And and also there's also a cool narrative. You're either in the cool kid group, or if you go against the narrative, then you're not in the cool kid group.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's where we when I suppose it might be a full thing, I don't know, but there isn't a connection to the cool kid group necessarily. There's a connection to the humans or the people or the things and the ideas and the not in the status, I think is the right word.
I call the cool kids, and the kids that hang out in Camps Bay and Health Bay, I call them the beautiful people.
Yeah.
Because I'm meaning that ironically.
Yeah.
No, I don't. have any need to hang out with them at all. I want to hang out with the real people.
Yeah. Yeah.
The real people, as you've just said, are usually, and it's so fascinating, Michelle, and I know we're diverting from freedom and the Enneagram, but the people that go against the narrative, the freedom seekers, are often the ones that actually have more trauma, more concern, more struggle, regardless of their type, because they can see a bigger picture.
Yeah, and they have that empathy isn't the right word, but that understanding of not struggle either, but experience, I suppose. Those dark
Yeah,
places.
it is that. It
Yeah.
is that darker, and I don't think that's to do with type.
No.
I don't. I think that's to do with an individual's, and there's hundreds of reasons for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will have to arrange something again, because I still want to kind of dive more into the lineage karmic aspects to the Enneagram, because I think that holds a lot in how we experience our current realities, or our current, lenses of the world.
I agree with you. And I think that, you use the word experience, and I think that's a very, very powerful word, especially when considering, just going back to your initial question and how you started this, was about freedom and is the purpose of the Enneagram to seek freedom, and yet it can be weaponized in boxing, etc. I think that the key word for anybody listening is simply, what is your experience of your type, your gender, your race, your socioeconomic class, whatever, because that's the goal for you. And the wounding of each type that you mentioned, which is basically the springboard for how we trap ourselves, as opposed to healing that wounding, is where we find the freedom. I think it's really amazing how people can connect to the wounding of their lead type, and yet the story and the add-ons and the way we deal with it all varies hugely. And there's a freedom in that too, if we were looking at the system of the Enneagram.
Freedom is an interesting thing. I wonder if we would recognize it.
Freedom in not the program you did, but my personal Mastery for High Performance program, I think it's in module 4, but freedom that I talk about there is not the freedom that we think. Freedom actually carries a lot of responsibility. To live freely, as we've been talking, to have one's own opinion, to question the status quo, to challenge whatever. There's a huge responsibility in that. And I think one of the issues around freedom in the world today is that people are granted freedom, supposedly, free speech, freedom to be whatever gender you are, freedom to express whatever you think you might be, you identify as a teapot or whatever. Sorry, as you can probably hear, I think it's all a load of rubbish. I think that that's fine. So we're giving you permission to be a freedom, but we're not teaching people how to take responsibility for that choice.
And this is where the paradox lies, because it's kind of, the edge of freedom for me is between this choice and constraint, because we only experience freedom if we realize the constraint of our freedom.
Oh gosh, that's so clever. Totally agree. Completely agree. Yes. And gender is a constraint.
Yeah.
We are born a gender. And I recognize fully, and I interviewed 126 people who were transitioning from male to female. I get it. Very, very, very. But when you transition, there's no freedom. There's so much mental. I just need to qualify that. That's why I
Yeah.
really have a problem with the current narrative.
Yeah, because there's no freedom, there's no human. Who are you outside of your gender qualification?
Well, also, it's very, very traumatic to
Mm,
change gender.
mm,
Every single one of the people that I interviewed had considered suicide.
sure.
And that is my concern with this narrative. You take young children, teenagers who are already dealing with who am I, where am I, what am where do I belong, whatever, and now you add this layer of choice. No, it's very damaging for their psyche, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
my heart goes out to anybody who's got this story, got a member of their family in this dilemma. Honestly, my heart goes out to them. It
Mm,
really is one of the most traumatic things. So the fact that it's so glibly addressed by people like Sam Smith on social media, I
mm,
have a big problem with that. Really big. Because he doesn't know the mental trauma that
mm.
he's causing people potentially.
Yeah.
And trauma is the most paralyzing
Mm,
as opposed to freeing
mm,
thing. Yeah.
definitely. And you can't necessarily shake that trauma. We relive, these traumas through different lineages. It's yeah,
Yes, this is
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Saffron, that's quite a somber note that we are ending this.
Well, it's
but,
what's
but
needed.
I thank you for bringing that up. It is,
Mm,
it's these delicate dialogues that we shy away from because we don't want to offend. And I have a big problem with that. I think we need to be able to speak about these things because it's important.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Oh, I have to say one more thing, Michelle. Thank you for that insight. I could talk to you for the next. This should have been an hour, by the way. But I think that you are so right.
Mm,
It's so tragic, like deeply sorrowful that the loss of the human potential gets lost so much
mm,
because people are afraid to talk about these more delicate subjects. They're afraid to go, even though we disagree, we can love each other anyway. And that's the problem in the world today, is that no one can have a disagreement with anybody because they just get shouted at or disgustingly badly treated or othered or,
mm.
I mean,
Or silenced. This is what really infuriates me, is
fine.
that you don't know what you're talking about, or be quiet. That aspect of it, and it's so disempowering, and it's creating a whole um, kind of
Society.
yeah society that it goes with the flow because it's easier, and inside there's a struggle of, but I don't really agree, or this isn't
Yes.
me, or that whole thing.
One of the most damaging things to social behavior, and I said this from 20 years ago, was political correctness.
Yeah, yeah.
Anti-political correctness completely. Even when I work in Canada, they're the
Mm.
most politically correct people on the planet because it's a 9 country. I
Oh,
say to them straight off the back, I'm just letting you know that I'm not politically correct. So if you can handle that, I can work with you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You know how non-politically correct I am.
Exactly. And I wonder, is this a South African thing, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we're the coolest nation on earth, because we are exceptionally skeptical of authority.
Yeah.
We don't trust governments, never.
No.
That's why so few of us, so many of us rebel, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful. This is why I have to live in this country. I'd be arrested or in prison if I lived in
Yeah.
England. Yeah, I'd definitely be in prison if I lived in England. I'm too scared to
Exactly.
even drive in the UK because something's gonna go. I'm gonna get in trouble somehow.
Yeah, I was yeah, I could talk for you for hours as well. I was just quickly on somewhere it popped up today because there's all this stuff going on with the farmers.
Yeah.
some woman has now decided she's going to put inheritance tax on the whatever, you know the story. But so they have, BBC has an interview with Jeremy Clarkson, and Jeremy Clarkson isn't politically correct either. But he handled it quite well, because he was inviting other, the farmers. It's like, I'm angry, but I can't be angry on someone else's behalf, you know and he invited their voices in, instead of her
Yeah.
slandering him for being a rich person that has just
What
bought
a
a car
clever
or whatever.
guy.
He's
Yeah,
such a,
that's
yeah,
a good
but
guy.
he's
Yeah,
definitely also not politically correct. And I
definitely
love
isn't.
it. Yeah.
But you see, a guy like him, again, he's got the confidence to go, well, then you don't need to agree with me.
Yeah.
And my whole vibe is, you don't have to dislike me. I don't dislike you just because we
No.
have a difference of opinion. I
Yeah.
can still hang out with you. Totally.
Go
But
have a glass of wine and a beer and whatever, and we take it further, and we
exactly,
understand the
have a
different
debate.
sides. Yeah.
That's the issue. There's no debate anymore. It's
Mhm.
I'm right, you wrong, shut up.
Yeah.
And that's the tragedy today.
Yeah.
And everybody, oh, I mean, I could talk, maybe we should take it offline. Really, the rubbish. People are like, oh, I'm going to leave America. I'm like, well, then leave. Like, we don't really care. I don't particularly care if Barbara Streisand or Robert De Niro want to leave America because now Trump's the president. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
But why
And
not interrogate why you're so freaked out that he is the president instead of making those stupid statements?
But stand up for what you believe in. Have the delicate dialogues and say, "Listen, this is the stuff that isn't working for me, and I don't. There's no. Yeah, this is my
Have a
line in the
dialogue.
sand." Yeah,
Exactly. And then like all these little sensible, these terribly sensitive little humans that are all like, oh my gosh, are you a Trump? I'm like, no, I'm not a Trump. I'm just saying, be open
yeah,
to debate. I'm neither nothing. I'm not telling
yeah.
you what my political affiliations are. I don't wish for you to know whether I'm supporting her or him or whoever. You know what I mean? Why can't we just converse?
Exactly, exactly, and that's where the freedom lies. So
That's
in that
freedom.
we can express ourselves
We must.
safely, and that, even that word has been overused, but
Yeah.
safely. We're always safe, but
Yeah.
to feel confident enough to be able to express ourselves, I suppose. Yeah.
That's it. I think that's the freedom.
Yeah.
He said,
Exactly. Yeah.
regardless of our type.
Exactly. Yeah. And the type is going to show us what maybe the the pattern is that's going to help us get there in a way.
Block your freedom and find your freedom.
Yeah.
That's what the Enneagram will help you with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If anyone wants to find more about Saffron, Saffron Baggallay and Associates, saffronbaggallay.com. Saffron does amazing courses and is a wonderful speaker and all kinds of magical things. And hopefully I will pull her into some more conversations next year.
I really hope so. I've loved these conversations, really. I
Thank
so
you.
enjoyed talking to you, and thank you to all your listeners as well.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Take care.